You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. Happy Halloween, y'all. It's that time of year, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about zombies and what I've learned from the whole thing. Michael J. Woodland talks about practicing with concealed carry firearms. You're going to do like James Brown, hit it and quit. This is a weekly podcast for the mature and the cool people in the gun community. The show's title is To Inspire, Not to Incite. My name is Ken Blanchard. I'm a gun rights activist, an author, a trainer, and a professional speaker, showcasing the diversity of the gun culture with experts in hunting, gun rights, the justice system, American history, and self-defense. And it's done all with compassion for all people. Welcome to the show. This show is sponsored by Crossbreed Holsters, maker of the Super Tuck in the waistband, the Mini Tuck, the Crossover Gun Belt, the Executive Gun Belt, the Classic Gun Belt, and the Freedom Carry in the waistband holster. They got more. Check them out at crossbreedholsters.com. At the time of this recording, it's the last week of October, which means a lot of Halloween and scary movies, a lot of things talking about the end of the world, the apocalypse. And you can't talk about the end of the world without talking about zombies. Now, for some people, zombies are played out. They are tired of hearing about it, tired of seeing the lime neon green stuff, the ammo, the swords, the machetes. But then there's a whole bunch of us that still like that stuff. Let me tell you what I've learned over the last few years about this zombie culture, this zombie fad and trend. Might be applicable to the gun owner. You know I like history, so let's go back to the beginning. Movies that talked about the end of the world and topics started as early as 1950. Everybody was worried about the nuclear bomb, the H-bomb. There were movies about what would happen if mutated animals and plants and people started attacking. Then it was in the 60s, even more about viruses and climate change. And it's pretty much been a repetitive thing ever since. From 1950 till now. Nuclear threats, viruses, climate change, nuclear, virus, nuclear, climate change, viruses, climate. And it just changed just a little bit. We kind of focused on the zombies. But zombies aren't new either. What I found out is that zombies are fictitious, undead creatures created through the reanimation of human corpses. Zombies are most commonly found in horror and fantasy genre. The term comes from Haitian folklore. The French word for zombie, or Haitian Creole for zombie, where a zombie is a dead body animated by magic. This black magic was powerful enough and done by voodoo priests or shamans known as boku, for various purposes, most commonly just for manual labor. It was said that zombies were routinely employed to do slave labor on farms and sugarcane plantations. In the voodoo religion, which is said to be practiced still by 80 to 90% of Haitians, it is said there are two ways a person can die, either by natural means, such as sickness, or by unnatural means, like murder. And those who die unnatural deaths were said to have souls that were particularly vulnerable to the witchcraft of voodoo sorcerers, who would entrap the souls in bottles or earthenware jars called zombie, astral, and use them to control the undead, which were referred to as zombie, cadaver. The bokur could use these reanimated corpses to do their bidding, either for benevolent purposes or for nefarious things such as toiling mindlessly in slave labor, attacking enemies, or carrying out dark magic or curses. Sometimes a person was turned into a zombie merely as punishment or retribution for crossing a bokur. And sometimes these bokurs would even sell their zombie creations. In 1968, George Romero and his co-writer, John Russo, made the classic horror film Night of the Living Dead, which focused on 7 strangers who take shelter in a deserted farmhouse and fight for their lives as recently deceased corpses come back to life for reasons unknown and are turned into mindless flesh-eating zombies. Upon its release, this film forever changed the way horror films were both seen and made. It was a film that allowed a black man to be the hero of a story and let him kick some butt and take names as he did everything possible to stay alive, only to have his victory cruelly snatched away from him in the final scene. When this came out, it was actually the same time as the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which makes the film's ending all the more powerful and painful. And it made a normally Haitian word Americanized. And what we've seen on television and in movies since the Night of the Living Dead is that authors and producers riff on the zombie lore and change it up. Some zombies run, some only can barely meander along, some eat anything, some can run and keep up with you, some can talk, some get the girlfriend at the end. They're all different. I remember the early days of Urban Shooter podcast when I created the Zombie Strike story, which Derek Ward finessed, made into a real deal for me. The original premise of Zombie Strike was that some folks had took a whole bunch of waste and threw it out there in the ocean and made an island of so much waste that actually was radioactive, and it sat there and fermented and changed. Some rich folks bought the land and put golf courses on it and made it a resort. Unfortunately, it killed everybody there, and it turned everybody that was there into a zombie. Not wanting to lose their money, the owners of this property made it a hunting reserve where contestants would go there using the golf courses almost as bunkers to play this game called Zombie Strike. And teams were formed, and everything was all great. It was the most popular televised event on television until zombies were found in Florida. And then the ones who had won the Zombie Strike Challenge became the zombie hunters to save humanity. That was the premise for Zombie Strike. It kind of went a whole bunch of different directions before it ended, but it was still kind of cool to read and create, because we would talk about all the cool guns and tactics, and that's pretty much where I want to take this. The whole zombie genre and all that we do has some good things that you can learn from it. One of the things is to be prepared. To be prepared, the prepping movement, to take care of your family, to be ready in case of a natural disaster, terrorist event, or just some strange thing that happens that makes you not be able to go to the store and pump your gas and do all the normal stuff. Pretty much the same stuff that happens during a zombie movie. The folks who are into this are prepared for such occasions. The second thing is the headshot. In almost every zombie movie, the head must be taken off or shot. Now, in normal situations, as a pro-gun person, you can't shoot a humanoid target without being looked at like you're a killer. But the zombie thing allowed us to shoot man-sized, woman-sized targets that were grotesque, but still had a head, arms, body. What's the big deal about headshots? Well, there's some history behind that too. Have you ever heard of the Mozambique drill or the failure drill? Most people who have been exposed to defensive shooting techniques have heard of the little slogan, two to the body, one to the head. But few shooters know that it's reversed to a defensive shooting technique called the Mozambique drill. Most other people know that it actually came and was popular by Colonel Jeff Cooper. From 1964 to about 1974, in an article written in Shooting Illustrated by Sheriff Jim Wilson, he says that Mozambique was going through a serious difference of opinion, also known as the Mozambican War of Independence. Mike Russo was one of the mercenaries hired to fight in that war. In the course of the conflict, Russo was engaged in a fighting at an airport in the city of Lourenço Marques, now named Maputo. And during that scrap, Russo, armed only with a Browning high power, rounded the corner of a building and came face to face with an enemy combatant armed with an AK-47. Russo made a quick combat presentation with his pistol and planted 2 bullets in the area of his opponent's breastbone. In a fighter's worst nightmare, the soldier not only stayed on his feet, he managed to hang on to his rifle. Rousseau, having lowered his pistol to the ready position, assessed the situation and decided to deliver a third shot to the man's central nervous system. Aiming for the head, Rousseau either fired too soon or jerked the trigger because his third shot hit the enemy in the throat. It did, however, sever the spinal column and neutralize the threat. Sometime later, Rousseau made the acquaintance of Colonel Jeff Cooper and told him about the incident. Cooper realized this would be a good training aid for his students and named the drill the Mozambique, after the country where the shooting occurred. By the late 1970s, Cooper had incorporated it in his training academy at Gunsight. In 1980, two SWAT officers from the LAPD department, Larry Mudgett and John Helms, enrolled in the week-long 250 pistol class at Gunsight. Mudgett told Sheriff Wilson that they were very impressed with the Mozambique drill and could easily see how it would bring a close-range gunfight to a quick and successful end, minimizing the danger to police officers or legally armed citizens. Mudgett and Helms sought Cooper's permission to take the drill back to the LAPD and his officers. And right around that same time, the guys who were teaching us at the CIA also did the same thing. So we were getting pretty much the same class right around the 80s. As the world became more PC, you don't hear it talked about as the Mozambique anymore. It's now called a failure drill. They modified the drill so the shooter kept the handgun on target after the first two shots and transitioned for the headshot if the threat was still viable. Today, the modern failure drill is accomplished by making a combat presentation to a target and firing two center mass shots as quickly as those shots can be delivered into an 8-inch circle. Following the second shot, the shooter follows through and assesses his target. If there's still a threat, then the third shot is delivered to an area between the eyebrows and the upper lip, in the area of the skull where bone is thinnest. One of the things that differs from what we're taught today is then back in the 80s, my guys were saying that you do not rush those two shots. You wanted to shoot and make sure that the shot placement was not in a marksmanship spot. You wanted to cause mass trauma to the body so the body would be confused. If you shot so great that you made just one hole, then the body might be able to compensate if they were high on drugs or alcohol or some mental state that just proved superior. But if you cause more trauma to the body before you hit the headshot, you might actually overload the nervous system and shut the body down quicker. The failure drill is not just some combat shooting fad or even a catchy slogan. It's an extremely useful drill that, when practiced, will save lives. It comes right in the back of all the zombie stuff where you have to shoot the headshot. One of the first products that I created for this podcast and for my listeners was I created some targets that use zombies, and I got probably made like 4 targets that they were pretty extensive line drawings, but they were don't shoot targets. Had a little girl in the front of one, zombies trying to get her in the back, and it was all fine and good except for it costs more to ship the things than they do to print them. So that was one idea that didn't make it for me. And then right after that, a whole bunch of companies picked up on ways to sell them, and they make them in color even. But my pictures are now free. If you go to blackmanwithagun.com and search targets, you can download a picture and blow it up as big as you want to, because it's a pretty big size. You can take it to the range. You can take it and put it in your man cave. You can put it in your cubicle. I've seen them in all. And again, it's free of charge. The latest zombie fad comes from the series The Walking Dead. I'll share exactly what The Walking Dead has taught me in a second. For those that don't know it, The Walking Dead is originally a comic book series created by the writer Robert Kirkman and visually designed by the artist Tony Moore. Despite being a thematic series revolving around zombies, Kirkman developed a novel-like writing focusing on human nature, as well as the extreme relationships settled in the post-apocalyptic scenario he developed for this universe of the series. Now, this first comic book series was released in 2003, and so far there are over 20 comic volumes already released. The success of the comics would inspire the adaptation of the story to other medias like television, a novel series, and a video game series. Most of The Walking Dead's plot is settled around the survival of the character Rick Grimes, his family, and companions. He introduces the reader to the post-apocalyptic world of the series after waking up in a deserted hospital in his hometown. During the first volume of the comic, Rick reunites with his family, his son Carl, and wife Lori, as well as he establishes a relationship with most of the main characters in the series. The plot's arc of each comic is settled around how Rick and the survivors will handle their lives and establish themselves once again in the brutal scenario of chaos left behind. The zombies are kind of like the afterthought here. They're not really the important part. The biggest lesson for The Walking Dead and why I like it so much is that you get to see how people act in a crisis. You see the bonding, you see the community, you see the lack of it, you see the selfishness, you see all that makes us humanity, the pros and the cons. And it's that which plants in my mind so that in case things go awry, I know that I have to make sure that things are secure, because it's not the zombies that will steal from you. It's your neighbor. It's not the zombies who are going to eat your food or drink your water. It's the person down the street. It's not the zombies who will rape your children or your wife or your son. It's the predator who's now loose. It's those things which I've learned from watching this series and watching how humanity unfolds, unravels, and comes loose. It gives me a good premise for why I do what I do. That's why I like The Walking Dead. It's just some plain old drama on how ruthless and how good and how bad people can be. And sometimes the main character is bad, sometimes he's good, and you kind of go back and forth, that whole moral dilemma when there's no society to help you, no culture to help you, when everything that you used to have is gone. You have to rely on what you have inside. That is what's attractive to me about this story. Are you prepared to survive the apocalypse? That's pretty much what I get out of every show. So I ask that question to you. Are you ready? This portion of the show is brought to you by the United States Concealed Carry Association. The USCCA has been providing education, training, and self-defense insurance to responsibly armed Americans since 2003. Join Tim Schmidt and myself here at usconcealedcarry.com. One of the crazy things about our sport and about shooting is everybody thinks you can just go to the gun range, aim a pistol in the general direction of the target, and squeeze off a round. But getting that round to go where you want it to go is a different story. It's all well and good to achieve proper balance and stance, but if you don't know how to control your finger on the trigger, you might as well throw your gun at your target as much shoot it. If you're shooting a semi-automatic pistol in single action mode, correct hand placement is to put the pad of your index finger an area just beyond the last knuckle on the center of the trigger itself. For double actions, placement should be on the first knuckle joint rather than the pad. Take care to not put your finger too low on the trigger, as pulling your finger along with the trigger guard will pull your shot low on the target. So it's a mechanical thing. The less you get your body involved, the more control you have. When it comes to pulling the trigger, apply smooth, even pressure on the trigger until the shot fires. Avoid pushing or pulling the finger laterally across the trigger, which is a common mistake leading to inaccuracy. Instead, make sure the pressure on the trigger is applied straight back. Now, if you can't aim, you'll never hit your target except by blind luck. When it comes to getting your round where you need it to be, nothing's more important than understanding a good sight picture. There are two parts to the proper sight picture. Everybody say it with me: alignment and focus. Quite simply, you align your front sight in the middle of the notch of your rear sight. The front sight should be level with the top of the rear sight, and there should be an equal amount of light on either side of the front sight. Sounds easy, right? But so many of us have trouble with that. This line of sight then should be focused on the point downrange that you want to shoot. And if everything looks right, but you're still missing the target, chances are you're focusing on the wrong sight. Make sure that you focus your vision on the front sight, not the rear sight of the target. Too often, shooters try to bring the target into focus, leaving the sight picture blurry. That approach is no good. Clear sight, blurry target. And if you have a 2-minute or less tip that can help another shooter out, feel free to send me a note so that I can get you on the show. Would love to have you. Are you starting something new? Do you need a logo, a mascot, website redesign, a new website altogether, album art for your podcast, or maybe even some podcast producing? If so, contact me, your friend and your brother from another mother at kenblanchard.com. I'm more than another company. I will help you get from where you are to where you want to go. Graphics, media, and design at kenblanchard.com. All right, Big Mike, you're up next.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to another Tips and Review segment. I am Michael Woodland, and today we're going to discuss practicing with a concealed carry firearm. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and they reflect back to the time of their life when they were more relevant with training than they are in present day? Or someone who conceals carry and think because they have a firearm, they can react. There are many who conceal carry that fall into this realm, but the simple answer is you have to practice. Depending on how you dress will vary on the way you conceal carry your firearm. If you are dressed in business casual attire, more than likely you will carry on the rear side of your hip. If you are wearing jeans and a t-shirt, more than likely you will appendix carry or stay with the rear side of the hip. Regardless of how you dress and how you carry, we must train in that situation to be safer. Either at the beginning of my range session or the end, I run a small drill to see my shot placements on targets under time. It's no secret that a lot of my time is spent on the range getting plenty of trigger time, but not so much with practicing drawing from concealed carry. Since the winter months are coming amongst us and the attire will change with the season, it's time to commit more time practicing with concealed carry. Now, if you are one who frequents the range often and you are confident on the trigger, you are good until we throw a change into how you react with an overgarment. As we spoke about it in the past with training before, if you are shooting on a budget or don't have the time available to head to the range frequently, we can do a little of this in the comfort of our home. If you are one who practices dry fire on the regular, then add to your drill with no ammo, pulling your firearm out from concealment from your attire. If you decide to take that approach, try to move fast as if you are in a real situation and attain a good sight picture. In the event you happen to fumble on some of the cover garment or you had to correct your sight alignment, no worries. Do it again, but slow yourself down. Look for any improvements you can make that will capitalize on a smoother transition. Work as fast as you can control the movements to where you can identify any mishaps. Keep at it a few times until you feel comfortable, then take it to the range and see how you do when you incorporate live rounds into the session. Just remember, practice, practice, practice. The 10 minutes you use to get familiar with your concealed carry situation could be the same 10 minutes that save your life. For those who are looking to contact me, visit blackmanwiththegun.com and under the Leaders tab, click on my name, Michael Woodland, and shoot me an email. Until next week, keep shooting, keep practicing, and have fun. Back to you, Ken.
Thanks, Mike. In case y'all didn't know, Michael is the founder of M-W Tactical, a firearms instructor with over 20 years of military experience. He helps individuals and other businesses with his style of instruction to increase everybody's sense of awareness with firearms. As he said, you can find out his contact information on blackmanwiththegun.com. Black Man with a Gun, Reloaded. Get the inside, the background, wisdom, information, and experiences of Reverend Ken Blanchard, CIA firearms instructor, gun rights activist, that has been involved in this community since 1991. Read about guns, the culture, the community, and the inside stuff behind what you see everywhere else. You can get it firsthand from the guy they call the Black Man with a Gun in his book on Amazon.com. Black Man with a Gun, Reloaded. And that's all I got for you this week, believe it or not. If you're in the D.C. area, D.C., Maryland, or Virginia, or you would like to check us out, there is a D.C. Podfest happening on the 10th and 11th of November. It's just in a couple of weeks. It's at the Wonder Bread Factory on 641 South Street, Northwest, November 10th and 11th. You can check out the information at dcpodfest.com. This is also a strange time of year for people wearing masks and pretending to do things. So be cautious, be vigilant, and watch yourself out there. Well, all right. That's it for this week. I want to thank our regulars and our guests. I want to thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting this show. Big shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you for making this show possible. For more information about anybody that has been on the show today, you can find their links and information at blackmanwithagun.com. Just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until next week, shalom, baby. This show is part of the Gun Podcast Network, an exclusive group showcasing professional pro-gun podcasts and broadcasters, hitting our targets